West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, here's the movie pitch for Citizen Murdoch, a 21st century remake of the Orson Welles 1941 classic Citizen Kane about an enormously wealthy newspaper owner. Act 1, a 42-year-old Australian newspaper owner starts buying American newspapers in 1973, moves to New York in 1974, and expands his wealth exponentially by buying his way into show business, where he churns out of his Hollywood studio the same kind of movies and television programs that all of the studios and networks are doing. In 1985, he becomes a U.S. citizen and gives up his Australian citizenship. Act 2, 10 years later, he's made so much money that he can afford to lose every penny he invests in a long-shot gamble on a TV network that puts the word news in its title, but is meant to do nothing but, first, elect Republicans, and second, destroy democracy. The network loses money at first, but then becomes a bigger and bigger profit center for Citizen Murdoch and adds billions to his wealth. Citizen Murdoch uses his network to elect the stupidest and most criminal president of the United States in history. Act 3. The criminal president loses his re-election campaign, and federal, state, and local prosecutors close in on him. At age 91, Citizen Murdoch completes his third divorce, this time from the second woman who Mick Jagger divorced 23 years earlier. And yes, Jerry Hall is available now to play herself. The defenders of democracy finally get Citizen Murdoch cornered and force him to admit, under oath, weeks before his 92nd birthday, that what his network was force-feeding its viewers was bullshit and damaging. And when asked why he didn't stop it, Citizen Murdoch says weakly, "I could have, but I didn't." The end. All of the dialogue you just heard appears in the redacted public version of a brief filed by the Dominion Voting System Corporation in its lawsuit against the Fox Corporation for defamation, because Rupert Murdoch's Fox network pumped out a steady stream of lies about Dominion voting machines in the overall campaign of lies that Donald Trump and Fox waged in their joint attempt to destroy American democracy and keep Donald Trump in the White House, even though he lost the election. I could have, but I didn't, is the kind of admission that lawyers dream about. Rupert Murdoch testifying under oath in a deposition conducted by Dominion's lawyers, when asked why he didn't stop the lies about Dominion that the lawsuit is about, said, "I could have, but I didn't." In any other civil case, That would be an admission of liability that the defendant could not survive. But with that admission under oath, the only thing standing now between Rupert Murdoch and at least $1 billion judgment against him in court is the First Amendment. The Fox defense, so far, rests entirely on the First Amendment journalistic principle that what Donald Trump was saying about the election was newsworthy, and Fox had a First Amendment right to cover it uncritically. Dominion needs to prove that Rupert Murdoch and Fox executives and the Fox entertainers on television knew that it was all a lie, and they pushed it anyway. Dominion has taken the discovery process a long way to proving that everyone at Fox knew it was a lie. In Dominion's filing today, we learned the Fox lawyers were worried about Sean Hannity saying it will be impossible to ever know the true, fair, accurate election results. That's a fact. On November 5th, the Fox News lawyer emailed, Hannity is getting awfully close to the line with his commentary and guests tonight. That same lawyer was asked in a deposition, should Fox broadcast election fraud allegations that it knows to be false? Answer no. A Fox executive was asked in a deposition, do you think that Fox has an obligation not to broadcast false claims to its audience? Answer yes. Dominion's filing revealed how Fox, which has absolutely no relationship to the news business, illicitly and secretly helped the Trump campaign by revealing confidential information about the Biden campaign's TV advertisement. During Trump's campaign, Rupert provided Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, with Fox confidential information about Biden's ads, along with debate strategy, providing Kushner a preview of Biden's ads before they were public. The Dominion filing shows that Rupert Murdoch never believed that there was the slightest irregularity in the 2020 presidential election. In December 2020, the Dominion filing shows that former Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, now a board member at Fox, texted Rupert Murdoch and his heir apparent, son Lachlan Murdoch, that Donald Trump has, quote, has actually convinced himself of this farce and will do more bizarre things to delegitimize the election. I see this as a key inflection point for Fox, where the right thing and the smart business thing to do line up nicely. He called for Fox to put forth solid pushback, including editorial, of Trump's baseless calls for overturning electors. And after receiving that text, Rupert Murdoch wrote to his son, call me later, Ray, Trump and Paul. Trump on Saturday sounded really crazy. 2 days after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Preston Patton, a show business executive who had worked for Rupert Murdoch in the entertainment business, on page 13 of the filing, quote, sent Rupert an article from the Washington Post stating that the pro-Trump media world peddled the lies that fueled the Capitol mob. Fox News led the way. Patton followed up with an email stating, I do think Fox News needs a course correction. Rupert responded, Fox News, very busy pivoting. We want to make Trump a non-person. Make Trump a non-person. And there, right there, the movie Citizen Murdoch swerves into the movie Frankenstein, where Rupert Murdoch has created the monster that he can no longer control and wants to make a non-person. But he can't be caught by his Trump-loving audience in his effort to make Trump a non-person, as Rupert makes clear in a later email to his son saying, quote, Fox News, which called the election correctly, is pivoting as fast as possible. We have to lead our viewers, which is not as easy as it might seem. Rupert Murdoch spent decades injecting poison into his viewers, poison that he refused to take himself. And when he wanted to nudge his viewers away from Trump, he didn't know how to do it. And he didn't blame any of his primetime entertainers for not even trying to. In an email to Paul Ryan after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Rupert Murdoch said, It was a, quote, wake-up call for Hannity, who has been privately disgusted by Trump for weeks, but was scared to lose viewers. So there's Rupert Murdoch, Sean Hannity's boss, the owner of Sean Hannity's microphone, saying that Sean Hannity has been privately disgusted by Trump for weeks. Another way of saying that is that Sean Hannity has been loudly lying to his audience about Trump for weeks. Privately disgusted? Sean Hannity? Privately? Sean Hannity plays a disgusted guy on TV every single night of his life. He plays a guy disgusted by something or everything. On the left side of American politics, disgust is Sean Hannity's brand. The good news is that Sean Hannity had the basic human decency to be disgusted by Donald Trump. The bad news is that Rupert Murdoch built a propaganda machine in which he and Sean Hannity could get very rich as long as they only privately were disgusted by Donald Trump. Same thing with Tucker Carlson, who was shown in a previous Dominion filing to beg the then more powerful, higher rated Sean Hannity to get a Fox reporter fired for accurately fact-checking Donald Trump in a tweet. Firing was the very first impulse for the born rich Tucker Carlson, who now makes tens of millions of dollars lying to Fox viewers every night, especially about his personal disgust for Donald Trump. That Tucker Carlson, who has never had a day of financial struggle in his life, that same Tucker Carlson had a first impulse of firing a reporter who in her lifetime will not earn the income Tucker Carlson gets in a year of lying for Rupert Murdoch's monstrosity that is now being exposed by the Dominion lawsuit. In his deposition, Rupert Murdoch was asked, what should the consequences be when Fox News executives knowingly allow lies to be broadcast? Answer, they should be reprimanded. They should be reprimanded, maybe got rid of. Rupert Murdoch is the top executive in that company. He knowingly allowed lies to be broadcast. By the Rupert rule, Rupert should be reprimanded and maybe got rid of. But everyone knows that will never happen because, as everyone who works in that temple of lies knows, Rupert's rules do not apply.
It is
to
Tuesday,
Citizen Murdoch.
the 28th of February of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Yeah, that's how the spice trade works, and it's still working. Yes, it is. Wow. A lot can happen in the amount of time that was spent between our last visit here. And the salon we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, yes, quite a bit. Had to put up with Marjorie Taylor Greene in a number of behavior patterns. The latest being is that she is going off about how she was attacked by this woman at a restaurant, and her adult son, who apparently yelled expletives at her, that she was attacked. Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then she called for civility amongst us. What happened to when people could, just sit in a restaurant civilly and having a meal without being attacked because of their issues, a difference of issues? That's her. The woman who called Parkland a false flag operation and crisis actors. Chased David Hogg down a D.C. street out in the open, filming for her little podcast she was doing at the time. Yelling at him, calling him a coward, when this kid's still grieving and in PTSD over the fact that 14 of his fellow classmates were slaughtered. And I can't remember how many kids were injured and stayed in the hospital, and they're still suffering their physical wounds to this day. Yelled at the President of the United States, not once, but twice during the State of the Union. Well, State of the Union, I guess there was another one. He was joint sessions of the House and Senate, and she yelled at him then too. So, Marjorie, like most bullies, cannot stand it when she is stood up to. Bullies don't like it when people stand up to bullies. That's why a little bully, Napoleon complex type of person like DeSantis, for instance, is doing what he's doing. Yeah, he decided, Disney didn't show me enough fealty, and they're going to lose their tax exempt status they've had for, 60 years. Special tax zone, so they can run their Magic Kingdom. And so the Magic Kingdom is now being turned into a Nazi enclave. Got the leader of Moms of Moms of Liberty. Is that what it is? The ones that are going around saying, we got to get woke out of the schools. They don't talk like that, but that's what they should be talking like. Yep. So the Nazi takeover continues apace, and there is little DeSantis with his white waiters. They go really good with the sheet and the pointy hood. Really good. And he's out there saying, we don't want no more liberal indoctrination. Really? Whenever you teach the truth of history is liberal indoctrination, but what they're doing isn't Nazi indoctrination one whit. Which seems odd, because a group, a conglomerate, it's a business type of, I want to call it an LLC, but regardless, a group of homeschoolers can teach Nazism to their little Nazis, but you can't teach democracy in the public schools. And we're supposed to pretend that this is normal. Well, if he wants some stuff happening in the street, it's going to happen. I'm sorry, because they don't like it when you stand up to them. A local, not around here, but I was reading about a local mixed martial arts guy. His gym is providing security for drag time reading hour in their local community after a bunch of Proud Boy white nationalist Nazis showed up and was terrorizing people. So there's somebody that at first blush one wouldn't think that they would do something like that, but he is. So he has members of his gym, and they're providing physical security against these Proud Boy brown shirt Nazis sent out there as shock troops to keep the mud people in line. Because that's what we're dealing with here, folks. It's about time we called it out what it is. We're way past the elders of Zion here. Yep. They're playing the old Nazi playbook. You're going to have a crystal knocked every night? We'll find a reason to have a crystal knocked every night. There's a reason why the Nazis came after burlesque in the 20s and the 30s, okay? Let's just be clear. It was identifiable. Some of the more, shall we say, conservative religious types. Didn't like all that flamboyance. Yeah, a lot of them harbored the closeted behaviors of the day, and the repression then manifested in something else outwardly. What could that be? So this whole thing about woke, what I call, pretty much a white nationalist Nazi takeover of the United States of America. It's not so much, and this is true, the prime motivating factor is that, a bunch of people who are their lessers are telling them, hey, we want equality. And if you give those people equality, it means that the more grand among us aren't as equal anymore. Yeah. And, but really what motivates their ire the most, the reason that a company like Disney, and I got to tell you, Disney is not some liberal bastion of libertine behavior. Well, I'll tell you some stories, or remind you of some stories about my time working at the Magic Kingdom in Anaheim. Not the big world one. But anyway, the Disney brand is not known for its libertine excess, shall we say. Not like a channel like Fox. Come on. Married with Children. Yeah, that's family values for you. Anyway, somebody like DeSantis going after Disneyland. What else are we going to call this? Disneyland? For saying that they're going to stand up for their workers? Well, within the confines of our special tax zone, you are free. And DeSantis didn't like that. Okay. I don't even want to get into what's going on with the Supreme Court, what's going to happen to student loan forgiveness. Oh, no, it's unconstitutional. Because then you got Paxton, who's still under criminal indictment, trying to destroy the United States of America and getting away with it. Going to shut down the federal government because they voted by proxy. Well, what the F do you care? You're in Texas. The House and the Senate make their own rules. What the F are you doing? Federalist Society, ALEC, I don't know, stock manipulating scafflock crook? Shall I go on? So, got quite a day yesterday and quite a day ahead of us today. I want to mention one thing about Daily Kos and the Daily Kos Guild and the folks who have been laid off. And what happened to Brandy Buchanan, I think, is kind of shitty. Especially since she's out in D.C. following the Proud Boy trial in person and live blogging about it daily. And she was the go-to for knowing what was going on. So it sounded a little Elon Musky about her separation from Daily Kos, where in the middle of live blogging, she loses her Daily Kos account, her Slack account, etc., etc. Fortunately, Marcy Wheeler over at Hullabaloo has picked her up, and at least we'll have her through the end of the trial so that we can at least have that, because that's a pretty damn good resource. Now, I know that you can't just let somebody have an account, after they've been separated. I understand that. But it would have been nice to have a little bit of notice, and I guess they're saying she did. Anyway, I don't think it bodes well in terms of at least appearance. And I wish that it wasn't so. But Daily Kos is the go-to place so that we can elect more and better Democrats. But I know times are tough. Anyway, what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin this Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays? Yes, at the top there, Citizen Murdoch's Xanadu of lies at Fox is exposed by the Dominion lawsuit. Then on the rest of the menu, Latino Republicans push back on the party's immigration agenda. The White House is giving all federal agencies 30 days to wipe TikTok off all government devices. And the Biden administration is creating a new task force to crack down on the explosion of migrant child labor. After the break, we move to the chef's table where NATO applicant Moldova expelled 2 foreign nationals caught in a Russian destabilization plot. And Montenegro lawmakers ended a court stalemate that threatened the nation's EU bid. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across to the left from the chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, because it really helps us pay our bills and make up for the, well, shall we say, a sizable payout to upgrade with new machinery to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting as it has been resisting for so many years. And thanks to your generosity in helping us pay our bills, we've been able to do that. So thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where you can find the actual reportage that has been reported. And so do that. The show notes and links diary is always found at Daily Kos, so go there. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. I'll get accounts on the other sites real soon, I promise. And most importantly, would you please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is out of the Associated Press by Adriana Gomez-Lison. More than half of the residents in the slice of Miami that includes Little Havana were born abroad, and when Republican U.S. Representative Maria Elvira Salazar ran for re-election last year, she won by 15 percentage points. The GOP's dominance in Florida's 27th congressional district is emblematic of the party's inroads with Latino voters in recent years in much of the U.S. and especially in Florida. Those gains helped DeSantis decisively win re-election last year and contributed to the GOP taking back control of the U.S. House. The strong showing, however, is leading to some tension as the newly emboldened Republicans in Washington aim to launch an aggressive agenda, particularly around immigration policy, because if you can't raise bait for votes, what fun is there to be even in elected office? In this reporter's opinion, back to the reporter's article at hand. Salazar is among a handful of Republicans pushing back against a sweeping proposal being considered in the House that would restrict asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. We understand that immigrants want to come and live in the promised land, Salazar said in a recent interview. Orderly legal immigration is good for the country and good for District 27. Okay, I guess, if you think that these Teutonic goose steppers are going to really let you be part of the club. Do you really think so? Well, we'll see. Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas, a Mexican-American Republican whose district covers a long portion of the U.S.-Mexico border from El Paso to San Antonio, has been even bolder, calling the legislation anti-immigrant. The dissent highlights a challenge for the GOP. The party's future may well depend on broadening its appeal among or beyond an aging, predominantly white base of support. And while some conservative Latinos support hardline immigration policies, there's a risk that the GOP could repel other persuadable Latinos by moving too far to the right on the issue. Well, you can do the old tried and true thing that they did with Trump, and that's just totally lie on Latin radio and TV. Democrats also face political challenges on this front. The Biden administration recently proposed a measure that would impose severe limitations on asylum, arguing that the surging numbers of migrants left them little choice. The push will almost certainly be challenged in court and has prompted criticism from progressives. Sungmin Kim of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The White House is giving all federal agencies 30 days to wipe TikTok off all government devices as the Chinese-owned social media app comes under increasing scrutiny in Washington over security concerns. The Office of Management and Budget calls the guidance that was issued yesterday, Monday, a critical step forward in addressing the risks presented by the app to sensitive government data. Some agencies, including the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and State, already have restrictions in place. The guidance calls on the rest of the federal government to follow suit within 30 days. And the White House already does not allow TikTok on its devices. The Biden-Harris administration has invested heavily in defending our nation's digital infrastructure and curbing foreign adversaries' access to Americans' data, said Chris DeRusha, the federal chief information security officer. This guidance is part of the administration's ongoing commitment to securing our digital infrastructure and protecting the American people's security and privacy. Congress passed the No TikTok on Government Devices Act in December as part of a sweeping government funding package. The legislation does allow for TikTok use in certain cases, including for national security, law enforcement, and research purposes. TikTok spokesperson Brooke Oberwetter said yesterday, Monday, the ban of TikTok on federal devices passed in December without any deliberation, and unfortunately that approach has served as a blueprint for other world governments. These bans are little more than political theater. House Republicans are expected to move forward today with a bill that would give Biden the power to ban TikTok nationwide. The legislation proposed by Representative Mike McCall looks to circumvent the challenges the administration would face in court if it moved forward with sanctions against the social media company. If passed, the proposal would allow the administration to not only ban TikTok, but any software applications that threaten national security. McCall, the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, has been a vocal critic of the app, saying it is being used by the Chinese Communist Party to manipulate and monitor its users while it gobbles up Americans' data to be used for their malign activities. Senator Bob Menendez, the Democrat from New Jersey, his counterpart in the Senate, did not shut down the idea of the chamber taking up a proposal that would empower Biden to take action against TikTok, saying it was certainly something to consider. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by Amanda Seitz from the Associated Press. The Biden administration said yesterday, Monday, that it is creating a new task force to crack down on an explosion of the illegal exploitation of migrant children for labor in the U.S. Is there a legal exploitation of them? Back to the article. Hundreds of companies that employed nearly 4,000 children last year were found in violation of federal labor laws, a dramatic increase in the last 5 years. I ruminated that it's been 5 years on since Trump had started separating families at the borders and locking up kids in icebox baby gulags. And 5 years on, there's several thousand that are still missing. And now they've found 4,000 migrant kids working in factories, underage little kids. Is there a coincidence there? Well, that rumination is in this reporter's rumination. Let's ruminate with Amanda Seitz here at the AP. Now, the growing problem has put Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra in the hot seat, with concerns mounting that migrant children have been discharged from shelters and out of federal custody too quickly, pushing them into vulnerable situations where they're more likely to become victims of child labor. Well, what about all those missing kids? In a new video that's been circulating, first reported by the New York Times, the secretary urged his staff to discharge children from the federal government's broken system of shelters faster. If Henry Ford had seen this in his plans, He would never become famous and rich, Becerra told staff during a meeting last summer in a recording. This is not the way you do an assembly line. The Times investigation identified more than 100 migrant children, some as young as 12, who say they're working overnight shifts and dangerous jobs for companies big and small throughout the United States. HHS and the Department of Labor rolled out new policies and the task force on Monday yesterday, while also promising stronger follow-up for children who are moved from shelters to live with sponsors in the U.S. The agency will help migrant children register for school. It will also now require staff to follow up with children who call the Office of Refugee Resettlement National Call Center to report safety concerns. And the Labor Department also threatened to halt the shipment of products made with child labor. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Science Quickly, a podcast from Scientific American. I'm Stefano Montali. If I asked you to visualize, say, Harry Potter, you'd probably have no problem picturing him in your mind. A teenage wizard with black hair, glasses, a thunderbolt-shaped scar on his forehead, and a wand in his hand. It would almost be as if you were pulling up a photograph in your head. This ability to visualize is often called the mind's eye, and most people would say it's as inherent as breathing. But it turns out that's not quite true. Estimates say about 1% of the population live with an extreme form of a condition called aphantasia. Those who have it can't visualize anything in their head.
So when they try and think about what an apple looks like, it's just nothing. It's black on black. For example, when I think about an apple, I can capture a conscious experience of an apple. I can see the stem, I can see a leaf, I can see a drop of water on there. It's not like holding an apple in my hand, but I have an experience of an apple.
Joel Pearson is a professor of cognitive neuroscience and director of the Future Minds Lab at the University of New South Wales in Australia. He's been studying mental imagery, including in the context of aphantasia and cognition, since 2008. One of the main questions, he says, has always been finding a way to accurately measure it.
Back then, almost no one, there was only a few people studying visual imagery because it was so hard to measure, right? It was just questionnaires and maybe an interview. The problem with questionnaires is that you and me could both imagine an apple and our imagery could be exactly the same, but I might rate it a 4 and you might rate it a 1, right? Even though we consciously, internally experience the exact same thing, or vice versa. Maybe we have totally different imagery and both rate it as 2. So that's kind of the inherent problem of metacognition when it comes to questionnaires. So a lot of what we do at Future Minds Lab is trying to develop new ways of measuring the mind, objective, reliable ways, like a microscope for the mind or a blood test to measure the mind.
One of the lab's experiments explored how a lack of mental imagery affects the way people with aphantasia respond in a hypothetical stressful situation.
We did another experiment, which was having people come into a dark room and read these scary stories on the screen. We found that people with imagery, when we measure their skin conductance response, get this nice escalating response during the story. Those with aphantasia get sort of a flatlining, bumpy. Whereas if we show both those group scary images on the screen, both groups go up. So when it's perceptual, no real difference. When it's words on the screen, a role for mental imagery, there's a clear difference.
Building on this research, Pearson and his team then recruited people with aphantasia from the Sydney, Australia area to come to the lab for another experiment. This time, He asked the participants to imagine a dark object and then a light one.
Your pupil contracts when you're imagining the bright thing, just like it does if I look up at the light. People with imagery, the pupil is different in the light condition. No imagery with aphantasia. There's no real difference there.
For a person to be able to volunteer for this type of experiment, they first have to realize that they have aphantasia. But how do you know that you can't visualize if you don't even know that other people can? Quite often, Pearson says the epiphany takes place in a meditation class.
The teacher will be saying, now picture this and picture that, and I'll be getting more and more frustrated saying, they keep saying that. What do they mean? I can't picture that. I compare it to people discovering they're colorblind. They just don't know what they're missing until someone describes somehow the vivid experience of color. Then they go, oh, wait, what?
On a brighter note, though, there are many successful creative people that live with the condition. Pixar co-founder Ed Catmull is one. Glenn Keane, a character animator behind films such as The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, is another. So is there a connection between imagery, aphantasia, and creativity?
I had lots of emails from people saying, oh my God, I've realized I have aphantasia. That's why I'm not creative. In fact, we're running a creativity study now here in Future Minds. And again, the data does not support any difference in creativity measures for those with aphantasia. So even though people tend to sort of have some intuition, they think that there should be a lack of creativity in aphantasia, the data just doesn't support that so far.
Living without mental imagery might seem like a disadvantage, but Pearson says there are benefits as well, especially in terms of those living with anxiety disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
All the data we have so far suggests that the more vivid your imagery is, the more prone you are to develop PTSD after a trauma. Things around anxiety are going to be different and less without imagery.
But what about good memories? Do they stick around? Pearson says yes, just in a bit of a different way.
That can take on a number of different semantics, ideas, concepts, spatial locations, emotions, and sometimes different senses. You can break aphantasia up into multisensory aphantasia, so it's blind across all the senses, or pure visual aphantasia. So why people's lifelong memories have less details if they have aphantasia, they're still there. It's not catastrophic. The memories aren't lost.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific Americans, Science Quickly, I'm Stefano Montali.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1942. That was the day that Sue Cowan Williams filed a lawsuit for equal pay for black teachers in Little Rock, Arkansas. 86 black teachers worked in the city's segregated school system. They were all members of the Little Rock Classroom Teachers Association. In 1941, the teachers formed a salary adjustment committee to look into pay discrimination. What they found there was a wide gap between black and white salaries. The average white elementary school teacher made $526 a year, while the black teacher earned only $321. White high school teachers brought home $856 a year, while black teachers only made $567. Backed with this research, the committee presented a petition to the school board demanding an end to pay discrimination. The board tabled the petition, and that summer passed another round of unequal pay raises. The teachers then approached the NAACP and asked them to handle their case. Thurgood Marshall agreed to take up the lawsuit. Marshall would go on to become the first black U.S. Supreme Court justice. Sue Cowan Williams, the head of the English department at Dunbar High School, was selected as the plaintiff for the case. The teachers lost their lawsuit and then won on appeal, but Williams paid a price for her involvement. The next school year, the school district did not renew her contract. She was finally rehired to teach at Dunbar a decade later. But first, the school superintendent called Williams to ask her if she had, quote, learned her lesson. It was a lesson that many workers have learned, that there is often a high personal cost for standing up for justice on the job. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown, Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy snow showers, and we'll be expecting occasional heavy snow showers throughout the day. Highs should be topping out about 35 degrees, winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and we're having quite a bit of a piling up. We were expecting about 1 to 3 inches, but it seems considerably more. I was watching Gunner the English Bulldog plowing through these heavy snow drifts, heavy in the terms of piling up, and it was well above his shoulders, so it's a lot deeper than 3 inches. Mainly cloudy tonight with snow showers, lows in the low 20s, winds light and variable, and then partly cloudy tomorrow with highs in the low to mid 40s, winds light and variable, and then snow and a mix of snow and rain returning tomorrow night. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is in the good range at 36 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in the moderate range at level 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.66 inches. Visibility is down to 2.1 miles. And relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 45 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 40 degrees and sunny. Rome is 56 with rain. Kyiv is 31 and clear. Kabul is 44 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 63 and fair. Tokyo is 53 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 74 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 46 degrees with rain and a flood watch. And New York, New York is 36 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Moldova's intelligence agency said yesterday, Monday, that 2 foreign nationals who posed as tourists have been expelled from the country and banned from returning for 10 years after they were caught carrying out subversive actions to destabilize Moldova. The Intelligence and Security Service, known as SIS, said in a statement that the pair were trained in data and information gathering for the implementation of a plan to destabilize the internal situation in the country and to provoke what it described as violent change to Moldova's constitutional order. The SIS did not state when the foreign nationals arrived in Moldova, which countries they were from, or for whom they were allegedly working. The agency said the pair carried out subversive actions that included investigating various locations near government offices and critical infrastructure, and that they were coordinated from the shadows by a group of individuals affiliated with a conspiratorial network of overseas political technology and social engineering experts, like the FSB. The SIS added that the foreign nationals were actively monitoring and documenting social and political processes in Moldova, including protests it said were organized in the capital by certain political forces. Last Sunday, several thousand anti-government protesters rallied in the capital to demand the new government fully cover energy bills amid a cost of living crisis. They also demanded that pro-Western President Maya Sandu step down. The protest was organized by a recently formed group called Movement for the People and supported by members of Moldova's Russia-friendly Shore Party, which holds 6 seats in the former Soviet Republic's 101-seat legislature.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Montenegro's lawmakers yesterday, Monday, elected all but one of the judges of the country's top court, ending a stalemate that has threatened to halt the Balkan nation's European Union membership bid. Montenegro's constitutional court has been blocked for months, with main political players failing to agree on new members. The court has 7 judges, but 4 places have been vacant since September. EU officials have warned Montenegro that it must allow for the normal functioning of the Constitutional Court if it wants to continue on its path to join the EU. The court is crucial for the rule of law, and as the country holds an important presidential election next month. Lawmakers approved 3 out of 4 judges, but failed to agree on the 4th candidate. The vote still means that the court is formally unblocked despite lacking 1 member. A new vote to elect a 4th judge is expected within weeks. Good news for Montenegro today, tweeted Vladimir Bilčík, the European Parliament member dealing with the region. I hope a 4th judge can be elected soon. The culture of dialogue and compromise across party lines is the only way forward for progress on the EU path, he said. Montenegro has been locked in a political crisis for months after its government fell in a no-confidence vote, and the main political players could not agree on whether to call an early election or to try to form a new government. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.